Gamers, welcome to the floor. So I'm still workshopping what I'm doing with the second channel right now, and I just moved, so things are changing, and I don't know how that's going to affect things, but for now, we're on the floor. We got the Aerith poster, which has not been hung, but it has been framed. I've come to make a bold and important announcement. I have finally finished Final Fantasy XIV. Now, I mean, that's technically a lie based on how you take that statement, because I finished A Realm Reborn, that being the base game of Final Fantasy XIV, before all the expansions. But even calling it a base game feels weird to me. Like, the expansions are the game. They're not just add-ons, they're not just like DLC. They're just a continuation of the same story. Different arcs, seasons, expansions. So, it's kind of hard to say what A Realm Reborn is, because it in and of itself isn't an expansion, but it wasn't even the original. So, as many of you probably know, I mean, I don't imagine anyone's watching this video without knowledge of this, but I might as well get into it. Final Fantasy XIV originally came out in 2010, and back then, the game was poopy garbage. So, Naoki Yoshida, was called in to take upon the Herculean task of fixing the game with a massive lore event that completely changed the trajectory of the story, sent the main character 5 years into the future, killed a bunch of important characters, and really changed a lot of stuff about Final Fantasy XIV. Then in the year 2013, we got A Realm Reborn, which was the completely redone version of this game. And over the last 10 years, we have gotten numerous expansions that heavily expand on the story, the lore, the characters, and most importantly, the game as a whole and its mechanics. Now, a lot has changed. I have played Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, but the version that I played may not be the same version that you played in the past or will play in the future. This game is constantly changing and getting a bunch of updates. I know a lot of people who played the game back in the day, back when it pretty much first came out, and I am having a very different experience from them. And also, like, all of these changes are not segmented. They happen throughout the years. So there are things in A Realm Reborn that only recently just got changed. And there are things that have been different since like 2016. So basically, it's a constantly evolving game. So your experience may vary. From what I understand, the story is pretty much intact, but certain things have been shuffled around. That said, I'd like to get into my overall thoughts on A Realm Reborn. Now, I enjoyed it a lot more than a lot of people seem to. A Realm Reborn is quite possibly the slowest, most tedious, and most arduous part of Final Fantasy XIV. But honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. I just loved being in the world of Eorzea, getting to meet these characters, even if their characterization pales in comparison to what we get later on. I still really liked it. I didn't really know where it was going or what it was trying to do, and it seemed pretty slow and meandering at points, but I enjoyed the individual arcs and what they had to offer. Essentially, when you create your character, you are introduced to the realm of Hydaelyn, and you start your little journey. You start in like one of 3 starting towns, you do some really basic quests. It takes you a while to meet the main party of the game, the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, and then once you do that, you basically have to deal with a bunch of tribes that are trying to summon primals, the iconic summons from the Final Fantasy series. And you go on little arcs fighting these primals individually. Ifrit, Garuda, Titan, Ramu. Although you don't fight Ramu, it's actually kind of a subversive story with that one. And all of these little arcs build up to a pretty good climax where you fight this guy. What was their name? An Ascian? Something called an Ascian, which yeah, I don't fully know what that is yet. Maybe I'm just stupid or I missed something, who knows. Oh yeah, the Garlean Empire. I almost forgot about them, which I shouldn't have, because the primary antagonist of the original base Realm Reborn, Gaius, was actually very good. He had some interesting points. He just went about his entire regime in the worst way possible, and would have been horrible for us. The thing about the Garlean Empire, which I find very interesting, is they are introduced, like many things, in 1.0, the story that you can't actually experience in-game anymore. But the way they are shown off in 2.0, which is A Realm Reborn, it's a bit strange. It's a semi-reintroduction, but, I mean, the game knows that you might know. The game knows that you may or may not know about 1.0. So it kind of is structured in a way where if you know, it's not going to be regurgitating things that you already know, but if you don't know, you're going to be able to catch on to what's happening. And you have some fights, you have some dungeons. Thancred does a thing at the end, one of the members of the Scions. I imagine this video would be pretty confusing if you don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't feel like I'm doing a great job of explaining things about like who the individual Scions are or what they're even doing. Frankly, it's a bit vague in the beginning. It's like they're a group of cool dudes hanging out, investigating magic anomalies, but their primary function at the beginning of the game is just to stop the people from summoning primals and fucking shit up. And then, you know, I wouldn't say they're a guild. They really are just like your JRPG party. But I don't really know how to explain like how they were formed. Well, I guess there was this guy, I forgot his name, there's this wizard guy who was big in 1.0, and then he died at the end of 1.0. And he has like this staff that's been broken, and you see that a few times in 2.0. And Minfilia, the current leader of the Scions, she was like his apprentice or something. And she's like, damn, that guy died. And some of the players saw it, some of the players don't know anything about it. But overall, the 2.0, like the original 2.0 story, it's fine. It's not amazing. It's not gonna blow your mind. The characters in it are fairly surface level. They're interesting. They have like interesting things to them. The best one is probably Cid. Like everything that happens with Cid and Gaius and like the whole, like the Garleans near the end of 2.0 is very good. And you get a lot from Alphino Leveilleur, who is a very prominent character, but I feel like his characterization isn't like fully formed yet. You know, it is very much the beginnings of a much, much grander narrative. Now, right after, you know, 2.0 did feel like a full game, but right after 2.0, you get the patch cycle, which is a series of 5 story updates that all basically contain their own arcs and tie up loose ends while setting up things for the next expansion. Essentially giving you 2 arcs per expansion, or 2 big arcs, like the main arc, which encompasses the expansion material, and then the mini arcs that encompass the patch material. And actually, all of these patches have their own names and their own entries on Backlogged if you are so inclined to look at all of them individually and not just the game as FF14 and not just the individual expansions. So that's why I have an absurd amount of games on my Final Fantasy ranking. which is not as absurd right now, but it will be pretty damn absurd going forward, because I am adding all of the patches. Now, the first 2 patches were like, I don't know. I can't say that they were lame. They weren't lame. They were cool. They had the Leviathan fight, which was like really sick. So the boss fights in A Realm Reborn have a very clear uptick in quality. The Ifrit fight is like Bingus whatever. It's a fine battle. Like it's like I have no feelings on it, good or bad. It is like such a mid battle. It's fine. Garuda, pretty cool. Titan, I don't even remember Titan, honestly. So maybe that one's not that great, because I barely remember it. Ramu, you don't actually fight, but Leviathan was pretty sick. The Leviathan fight rocks. And afterwards, the story gets a lot more interesting. You get to learn a lot about, like a group of refugees that have been displaced from the calamity that happened at the end of 1.0. So this has been like an ongoing thing for the past 5 years in universe, but you're really getting into it. You're really learning more about it, since the Scions don't have to deal with more primals and specifically the Garleans right now. So they're able to tackle more interesting subject matter in a much more fleshed out way. You get introduced to new characters like Moonbrita, and like she has a full arc in this patch cycle. I'm not going to spoil anything of it, but it hit me quite hard because I really couldn't have predicted how it was gonna go down. At this point, we're getting a lot more voice acting. Granted, that is my biggest criticism with A Realm Reborn, the experience of A Realm Reborn in general, is the major lack of voice acting. Now, the voice acting is quite good. We have pretty well-known VAs here and there. We have, his name's not coming to me. Sam Regal. We have Sam Regal playing Alphino. We have a few other memorable people that I don't know the names of. There's this character called Nanamo Ulnamo, whose voice gets changed sometime in the patch cycle. She's played by one actress, and then she gets changed to Erin Fitzgerald for like not that long. And then once the patch cycle is over, every single voice actor changes, and they all become British. But we'll get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So, 2.1, 2.2, they were pretty cool. They were okay. 2.3 though? Now, let me remember which one 2.3 is. 2.3 was fucking cool. I don't remember which one it is. Okay, 2.3 and 4, I'm gonna group them together. Were fucking sick. You have the whole Shiva arc. That's the Moonbrita arc, that's the Shiva arc. Like, it was so cool. There's a lot of intrigue going on there. You get a lot more of Reborn and Nanamo, and you get to meet this dude named, like, Ilbert. Fucking Ilbert, yeah, that guy. You get some cool duties, which are, like, your more set-piece kind of quests, and the quests get a lot more intricate now, because before, it's like you had some bosses, you had some dungeons, it was pretty vanilla stuff. And it served to get you introduced to this world and get you introduced to the mechanics of the game. Now, a lot of people find this kind of game pretty intimidating. Let me go grab something. This is a mouse that I bought specifically to play Final Fantasy XIV. It has 12 buttons. Now, a lot of people, when they see this mouse on my desk, they get kind of intimidated. They're like, why do you need all of these buttons? And I have to say, I don't know. It's Final Fantasy XIV. I need them. I have played a lot of the game with keyboard and mouse and with controller as well. I was initially intimidated by the controller, but I did a little thing called play the entire Xenoblade Chronicles series. So I'm fairly used to playing this kind of game on a controller now. And honestly, they're pretty comparable. the game takes a lot of time to make sure that you know, like, what the hell you're doing, and I still kind of don't. I've played for over 100 hours at this point. That's not 100 hours of content. A lot of those hours are just messing around with buddies in the game, going to house parties, you know, fun stuff. I mean, it is an MMO after all. Not all of your hours are necessarily going to be taken up with story content. So a part of this arc, a part of this whole 2.0 Realm Reborn section of the game is to make sure that you have a lot of time to become intimately familiar with what the game is trying to do and what it has to offer. Now, 2.5 is really where things start picking up. It starts picking up on the intrigue. The cutscenes get better. The voice acting gets better. The writing gets better. And it feels like a whole new game almost, but not quite yet. It is the longest patch, and at this point you will have to complete certain quests in order to progress in the story. You'll have to do the Crystal Tower, which is a big old reference to Final Fantasy III. And that was quite fun. I did that with a group of buddies, had a good time. And I don't know, something about the 14 community at large has been really inviting to me. I know that every fandom has their good parts and bad parts, mostly bad, but you know, but not necessarily even through this game, but I've met a lot of really cool people and have been able to connect with them through this game. And that's something I didn't have when I started playing it. I started around Reborn multiple years ago. Like, I don't even remember. I probably started it around the time that Final Fantasy Origin Strangers of Paradise came out. So yeah, I'm taking my sweet ass time with this game. And I'm trying to speed it up a little more, which is easier to do, but we'll get to that. So finally taking on the Crystal Tower was a pretty big moment for me, because not only was I finishing a Realm Reborn, getting to the end of this massive slog, for lack of a better word, a slog that I enjoyed, but a slog nonetheless, and doing it alongside others just made it a much more full and fulfilling experience. But then we finally get to the end of a Realm Reborn, and the massive hour-long cutscene that basically caps off the entire expansion. Now, this is a cutscene where every single character and plot point and moment of intrigue comes together for a massive climax. And I don't think I want to spoil any of it in this video. I'll do a spoiler discussion for, like, Heaven's Word or something, you know, like, a Realm Reborn spoilers are not something people care about in 2024, but I'm gonna keep it tight-lipped for anyone who may have not experienced it yet. And for people who may be on the fence about, like, whether 14 is worth the time investment at all, I would say this cutscene is absolutely the thing that makes or breaks that for you. Because, so, as a joke, I've been recently referring to Final Fantasy XIV as Game of Thrones if it wasn't fucking around. Now, that may lead to some opinion on my opinion of Game of Thrones, and obviously, comparing things to Game of Thrones is very reductive and lame and boring and not cool and lame, and I want to stop doing it. Because Game of Thrones has been dead for a while. And yes, we do like the prequel show. We like the dragon stuff. We like this. But Game of Thrones as a franchise its time has passed. And I think Final Fantasy XIV, at least for me and for a lot of people, can adequately replace that kind of storytelling. Now, I mean, this storytelling is probably more prevalent in novels and stuff, and I haven't read that many fantasy novels, but I am shocked, and I'm absolutely entranced and excited by this game's dedication to complex fantasy writing, because it is really trying in every aspect to make the political intrigue complex and believable and engaging. And every single character, even if there are characters that you might not care as much about, even from the base Scion cast, I know that there's some characters that people often will probably not care about. Yida and Papalimo are probably not anyone's favorite Scion, but every single person, every Scion has a stake in this plot. They have something to do, they have somewhere to be. They're all like chess pieces magnificently placed on an intricate board. And some shit goes down in this cutscene that I would never have expected. And there's crazy plot twists. The animation, it just gets like insane, incredible, honestly. Like, we've seen pre-rendered cutscenes in this game. We've seen epic battles. We've seen a bunch of stuff go down in this game. But literally none of it, not a single part of it, was this great. Like, it is the best looking, like the shots are so much better, like the directing gets better, the lighting gets better. It's like night and day. It is cinema for the first time. Because like a lot of these cutscenes, though well written and intriguing they can be, are characters standing in like the Hidden Sands Scion hideout. They're just like standing there and shit goes down. Now that is where the whole Moon Brita stuff happened, and that was a great piece of content. But this was just on a completely other level. And the fact that it takes place in like a ballroom scene. I think every single good fantasy work of media needs a good ballroom scene. Like, let's think about this. Three Houses has one, Berserk has one. Like, Berserk has a fucking crazy one. There's probably many, many more, but it is such a, what I think to be an under talked about staple of fantasy media that I very much adore. A lot of shit goes down, and I have to point out that Thancred, you know, this character in the Scions, is just like trying to rizz up some chick while like people are dying and shit's going down in the other room, and they're like, bro, we need help. And he's like, shit, I'm sorry, I guess there's a situation here. Thancred's pretty cool. I missed out on some of his characterization because I started in Gridania rather than Thanalan. And if you start in Thanalan, you get a lot more characterization for Thancred, and you actually like know what the hell is going on with him by the end of 2.0, which I didn't, but I thought that whole story and fight was pretty cool. But this is not that. This is 2.5. And basically all the Scions get split up. And then they came, which is a meme, kind of. So, throughout the patches, you meet this guy called Emmerich. You are much more engaged in the land of the elves. I forgot what it's Korthus first, and then like you go to somewhere else. The fuck is it called? I forgot. I straight up forgot. But there's dragon shit. You have a big dragon fight on the bridge. This happens before the ballroom scene. Very cool boss fight, which is apparently completely different than its original form. I thought that boss fight was fucking sick, because you're on this bridge and this dragon's just like coming towards you. And you have like all these characters. You have like NPCs helping you. And it's a really cool fight. Granted, there's a lot of really cool fights. You fight Midgard Zormer at some point. He's like a big fucking corpse on a fucking boat, and then he becomes a little guy, a little dragon guy, and he follows you around, and you can even have him as a minion, and he'll perch on your shoulder or your head if you're playing as a potato. I'm going all over the place, but that's just like, I forgot how many cool moments there are in 2.5. Like, 2.5 is like the real shit, you know? Like, I as much as I did enjoy the rest of the game, and I know a lot of people don't, it cannot be understated how much better the game gets once you finish 2.0, and especially once you get past 2.2, is like when shit gets real. It's when they stop fucking around. Just like Game of Thrones. They stop fucking around. Exactly. That's why FF14 is just Game of Thrones if they stopped fucking around. Ishgard. It's called Ishgard. The land of the elves, the land of the dragoons, which I play as an elf dragoon myself. So, you know, I'm right at home there. Did I talk about Emmerich? Emmerich's cool. He's also voiced by Alvis from the Xenoblade series. So basically, you go to Ishgard at the end to seek, like, salvation. Because everything's fucked up. Your buddy Reborn is in a bad spot. You know, I don't want to spoil things, but shit went down. Some of your friends are in pretty bad spots. Some may or may not be dead. But basically, the main character, Alphino, and like someone else. Oh, Alphino and Tataru, who is based. Okay, so Tataru is the best member of the Scions because she's the only Scion that has like a real job, other than Minfilia, I guess. You know, Minfilia's pretty put together, but you know, like Thancred's like this playboy rogue. Fucking, oh fuck, what's his name? Damn it, what's his name? The fucking guy. Oh no, what's his name? Basically, a lot of the other Scions, they're fucking around. Tataru's not fucking around. She's like the receptionist. She's like the treasurer. She knows how to deal with like money. So she's pretty cool, honestly. She might be not as great of a summoner as you want her to be, or as she'd want her to be, but she's still our friend. I don't know, what the fuck am I? I'm going on about Tataru. Like, okay, so you go to Ishgard, and then this fucking narration starts where this guy always says, and then they came. And it's just, it's really cool and it's well written, but I mean, it's funny for obvious reasons, and it's been heavily memed in the community. To the point where, like, I was finishing up 2.5 and all my friends, or a lot of my friends were in the call with me, and then they were just like, they're going to come. And then they came. So, you know, pretty good start to Heaven's Ward. Now, Heaven's Ward is fucking sick so far. Like, I am enjoying it so much. I don't want to get into it too much because this is a video about a Realm Reborn. And there will be subsequent videos, probably. But like I said, like I've been saying, the quality just is on an uptick. It is just constantly improving. So now all the voice actors have changed, which most of them pretty okay with that. Most of them I don't really notice that much. Tataru just becomes Fiora from the Xenoblade series. Alphino's voice is something that has kind of, it's been in my mind a lot, because he's probably the member of the Scions with the most lines, especially now in Heaven's Word, because a lot of the Scions are MIA at the moment. But his voice changes from Sam Riegel to Colin Ryan. Now, I'm actually previously familiar with Colin Ryan because he was in an episode of Doctor Who Season 10, and it was probably the best episode of that season, and he gave an inspired performance. So when I learned that he was actually going to be playing Alphino from now on, I was pretty excited because I really, really loved him in that episode. But it did take a bit getting used to his new voice. Every time Alphino would talk, I just imagined Sam Riegel coming out of his mouth. And Sam Riegel has been with me for so many journeys. Tales of Xillia, Persona 4, other things. That fucking weird K anime. Dude, no one knows about the K anime. So now that I'm in Heaven's Ward, I've seen this game's transition from a very broad sense of storytelling to a much more focused story, where individual arcs take precedent and the NPC characters, your party members, the ensemble cast, is much more integral to the overall plots and what's happening. We're getting human drama, we're getting political drama, we're getting fucking crazy dragon lore, we're getting more and more iconic characters, not just, you know, quest givers and, you know, generic MMO characters.
You know, these are now iconic Final Fantasy characters. Everyone talks about the game's comeback story, but it's usually seen as just going from 1.0 to 2.0. And I feel like that's really not the case, because A Realm Reborn, through the base game and the patch cycle, is the comeback story. You start from the very bottom, from the beginning, from, you know, fairly standard MMO mechanics, tropes, and storytelling. And you slowly but surely and naturally transition into this much different kind of game. A long-form fantasy narrative. And I do mean long form, which is pretty rare to see. I think that's pretty much everything I have to say about A Realm Reborn and some starting of Heaven's Word stuff. Now, I will be back to talk more 14 when I have finished Heaven's Word, and probably its subsequent patches as well, because that'll give me more content to talk about. Now, who knows when that will be? Probably a while, but in the meantime, if you like long-form storytelling kind of things, I have more videos on similar series coming up. Now, one thing that I've mentioned a few times in this series, or in this video, is the Xenoblade series, because there are many parallels, and the fandom of 14 and Xenoblade is, the Venn diagram is basically a circle. So, if you're into this game, you would probably be interested in my new podcast that I have. Yeah, I know, shameless plug before we round this out. So, me and my buddy Nish Quick Pops have started a 100% Xenoblade-focused podcast called The Conduit Cast, which you should definitely check out. We just released a massive lore video, and we are working on the next one, which should be out pretty soon. I won't spoil what it's about, though. And hey, if you're not into Xenoblade, but you're into 14, then that's a recommendation. Now, I don't think we have any videos or podcast episodes that are safe, spoiler-free yet, but we'll see about that in the future. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I've been Brotagonist, also known as Brotagonist, also known as the Conduit Cast, also known as Hand on Grass, which I haven't updated that channel in fucking forever. But I don't have an outro. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna play more Final Fantasy 14.